The purpose of these slides is to give you a quick overview of the agenda that we expect for Sunday, April 30th, in hopes to try to make the meeting go a little bit faster. It's a lot of complicated issues, and we are trying our hardest to break it down so we can move efficiently as possible. Before we get started, we highly suggest that you open the Google Drive with all of the meeting materials and the documents to which we will refer during the meeting. That way you can more easily follow along. So this first slide shows you an overview of the meeting agenda. I won't go through it, but it would be helpful to keep this slide open or the meeting agenda open so that you can more easily follow along. All of the following slides will give more detail on these 9 items. So the first agenda item is to go over the purpose and the outcomes or anticipated outcomes of the meeting. That's to just make sure we are all on the same page. The purpose of the meeting is to support the adoption of revised skeleton bylaws and special election procedures for the upcoming May or June 2017 local chapter election. The anticipated outcomes of the meeting, what we hope to walk away with, are the following items. 1, to be ready to vote to adopt revised bylaws with new provisions that are needed to support the special election. That's what we call the skeleton bylaws. The next outcome we hope to achieve is to be ready to vote to adopt special election procedures. Thirdly, we expect to vote, hopefully during the meeting by voice vote, to direct future chapter leadership to continue the work of the Bylaws Committee. Next, we hope to walk away with an agreed upon timeline and mutual understanding of the next steps in the nominations process. And finally, we hope to walk away with a shared understanding of the status of your chapter, the chapter members' national dues, and where your ballots are for the ongoing national election. So this next slide is about the agenda item that goes over the April 15th meeting and where we are post-meeting. So back in the April 15th meeting, we discussed the status of the DC Metro chapter, and we briefly discussed how we got here, where we needed to do a new election. After that, the subcommittee of the Bylaws Committee, and that was Takia Young and Marion Terrain, presented 4 documents, and those documents were proposed bylaws and proposed election procedures. Each subject had 2 versions, one for the special election and one in general. So that made 4 documents. What we found at the April 15th meeting was we were too ambitious and it was just too voluminous to complete in the time allotted. So after the meeting, also during the meeting, the interim president, Leroy Jackson, appointed an interim nominations committee. That was Marion Terrain, Dawn McCoy, and David Payne. So after the meeting, we reviewed the minutes and we talked about what to do. We consulted with the Bylaws Committee members and the subcommittee members and really got that the sense of the chapter was to just focus on those document revisions that are necessary to support the special election only. And so that's why we're meeting on Sunday, April 30th, so that we can present the same substance that you've already seen from the subcommittee, but we've stripped it down so that it is only those provisions that relate to the upcoming special election. So to start that process, the next agenda item will be to take a quick look at the current bylaws. I call them here the handbook bylaws. And there is a hot link in the slides to document A. They don't look like what you have seen before, but they really are substantively no different from the handbook that the chapter was using as bylaws. We just put them into a bylaws format, and this is the status quo, what exists now. That's your document A. So the next agenda item is to take a look at document B, which is the proposed revision to the status quo. We're calling these the revised skeleton bylaws, document B. Now document A was marked up to create document B, and if you click on that hot link, you will see this revision. This was marked up again with only those revisions from Takia's presentation that pertain to the special election. There were many other provisions that we talked about, highlighted, noticed that needed to be revised, and some members of the Bylaws Committee feel very strongly that perhaps the entire bylaws need to really be revamped. But we placed all of those issues in a parking lot for the Bylaws Committee to continue its work into the future, perhaps over the next 6 or 12 months, whatever the chapter decides. Continuing with the same agenda item, we wanted to take a closer look into document B. Document B contains 6 separate proposed revisions to the status quo. Each of them can be voted up or down by the chapter. If one is voted down, then it does not necessarily impede our progress going forward. But we wanted to step through each one of the 6 proposed revisions one by one so that you can see what you will be voting on. At the end of this agenda item, we will discuss the items in this agenda, and then at the end, we will call for a vote, which will happen after the meeting through an electronic means, specifically Election Buddy. So the first significant change is labeled A. This change would add language that would clarify that the chapter determines who meets the criteria for regular membership, and that this determination is appealable to the executive committee. The next significant change, B, is a little more complicated, so we actually broke it down into 3 sub-areas. Now, B is setting forth what is the eligibility criteria for becoming an elected official of our chapter. Interestingly, none currently exist in the bylaws. So there are 3 proposed changes. Again, even these sub-changes can be voted up or down. The first one would require that only financial DC Metro chapter members may become elected to the key offices. Believe it or not, that is not technically written in the bylaws as they exist now. So this would require that you must be active financial with the local chapter to become elected. We can discuss this because other proposals might be that you have to be active or financial with the local and the national chapters. The second proposed eligibility criterion would require that only graduates of Lincoln may become elected to key offices. This also is not currently required, and as you know or may not know, it is not a requirement to be a graduate of Lincoln University to be a member of the alumni chapter. So this would require that you would need to be a graduate to become an elected official. Now, this will also require some discussion because some have proposed that perhaps it should only be the president and or the treasurer that would be required to be a graduate of Lincoln, and some don't think that this is appropriate at all. The third one is The third proposed eligibility criterion is language that would prevent candidates from serving also on the nominations or election committee. If someone is on the nominations committee or the elections committee, this would preclude them from also running for elected office. This was proposed because many committee members felt that this is a conflict, an inherent conflict of interest. So those are the three eligibility criteria that are being proposed. Now, back to the significant changes. Significant change C would add language that would allow for electronic voting. D would add language that would allow for us to have more detailed election procedures, more detailed than what may be set out in the bylaws. E would add language allowing for an off-cycle election. Currently, the bylaws presume that the only elections will happen in January, and obviously we're about to have an off-cycle election. And then the last one, F, would add language that would allow for an election committee that is separate from the nominations committee. And that's just allowing for that. It's not necessarily requiring it. For example, in the special election, where we are proposing that there be one committee that would deal with nominations and elections. So those are all of the proposed changes to document A, and those changes are marked up on document B. Again, those will be voted after the meeting on Sunday by electronic means. So moving on to the next slide, this is about document C. Now, document C was previously presented at the April 15th meeting. All this is the special election procedures that were presented by Takia. It's been relettered to a different document number, but it's the same information that Takia already presented and we already talked about. So if you just click on the hot link for document C, you will see the provisions that are being proposed for the special election procedures. Now, again, when it comes to election procedures, the committee did note several other items that could use editing that we could include, but those issues, just like the other bylaws issues, were placed in a parking lot for the bylaws committee to work on at a future date, perhaps over the next 6 to 12 months, whatever the chapter decides. Here, I think the biggest discussion will be that we should agree on a timeline for the election. Some committee members feel like we might not be leaving enough time for nominations to be open, so we want to make sure that the chapter is in agreement on the timeline for the election, which might extend into June if we adjust it. The next agenda item would be a motion, hopefully to entertain a motion where Interim President Leroy Jackson will entertain a motion that would direct the new chapter leadership to continue the work of the Bylaws Committee. Remember, we're talking about that parking lot and it's full of issues that need to be addressed in the future. And we want to record the sense of the chapter now that the new leadership should continue this work. The next agenda item, we would hear from the nominations committee, and we would let you, chapter members, ask them any questions that you have on next steps. The next agenda item would be an update from the treasurer, that is me, Cherise Carney Nunez, and it will be an opportunity for me to let you know where we are in terms of submitting national dues to the General Alumni Association of Lincoln University, and for us, the interim chapter leadership, to hear from you, the members, on whether you have received your national ballots. And we'll discuss any options or questions we have about that going forward. Finally, we'll just have a few minutes to conclude. We will agree on the next in-person meeting, which would be a local candidates forum. It might be on May 13th, but if we change the timeline for the election, it would probably need to be moved to the first week of June. We'll answer any questions we can about the Alumni Summit, which is coming up on May 20th, and any other questions and concerns that you might have. Thank you so much for taking the time to prepare for the meeting.